Mars wasn't meant to feel like home. It wasn't built for it. But for Nara Velen, nothing on Earth had ever made sense the way Mars did. She had arrived at Outpost 17 with a single crate of belongings, a botany doctorate from Oslo, and a request: solitude. No parades. No team building. No distractions. Just red dirt, synthetic air, and the silence she had once thought might kill her, but now knew had been her salvation. For 6 years, Nara kept to herself. She woke each soul before the artificial dawn, pulled on her worn exosuit, and stepped into the greenhouse dome, where oxygen levels were highest and the plants, her plants, waited. Here, she grew hope. Terraforming pods, oxygen-producing algae, tuber crops genetically altered to thrive in thin air and freezing soil. Her research reports were thorough. Her compliance logs, pristine. She spoke only to the AI systems and the old maintenance droid she called Fennel. Until one soul, the silence, spoke back. She was cataloging a new root decay pattern in her desert beet hybrids when the static first bled through the comms. Channel C7, reserved for colony-to-orbit data pings, crackled to life. Not the usual hiss of solar winds or stray radiation. A whisper. At first, she dismissed it. Space was a noisy place. Even inside a sealed dome, background interference was like rain against glass. But then it came again. Do you still dream of the tree with the blue leaves? Nara froze. Dirt crumbled between her gloved fingers. The message repeated, soft, male, haunting in cadence. Do you still dream of the tree with the blue leaves? She stood slowly, heart thudding against the padded interior of her suit. There was no one else on this channel. C7 was hard-coded for telemetry only. No live communications. And certainly no poetry. The message stopped. Silence returned. She stared at the console for a long moment, then keyed into the system's trace diagnostics. No source data. No timestamp. No digital footprint. Like it had never happened. That night, she couldn't sleep. Not even the low hum of the thermal regulators or the synthetic wind outside the dome helped. She wrapped herself in an old thermal blanket and sat in her bunk, staring at a photograph of a tree from one of her dream journals. Blue leaves. White sand. Crescent moon hanging overhead. The dream had come to her since childhood. She'd never told anyone, not her professors, not the council psychologists who screened colonists, not even the journals she submitted for publication. So how could anyone know? On the next soul, the voice came again. 1739, exactly. You're not alone, Nara. We feel your loneliness. Who are you? She whispered into the mic, heart pounding. No answer. Just static. She began logging every appearance of the signal. 1739, without fail. She adjusted the antenna array. Boosted the spectrum analyzer. Isolated the frequency, 98.3 MHz, beyond anything the colony used. She checked the solar flare activity, low. No storms. No anomalies. But the signal didn't behave like anything she'd studied. It carried no metadata. No source trajectory. And yet, it was always clear. Always intimate. On the fourth soul, she spoke first. If you're real, say something only I would understand. Silence. Then. In your dream, the tree hums when you reach out to touch it. And you never do. You're always afraid it'll disappear. You cry in your sleep sometimes, because you wake up before you can touch it. Her knees gave out. She slid to the floor, the weight of 6 years of solitude suddenly too heavy. How do you know that? Her voice cracked. I saw you in the bloom stream, the voice said. You reached across the divide. And I reached back. I'm Kalen. I'm not from Earth. She sent a log to Central Mars Command the next day, short, clinical, non-alarming. Minor comm interference observed, likely non-local, requesting spectrum audit. They would take weeks to reply. She didn't wait. Nara, are you human? Kalen, not quite. We were once like you. Now, we are. What time has changed? Nara, where are you? Kalen, closer than you think. I orbit you like memory. Mars is quiet. I can hear you better here. Nara, you said you saw me in a bloom stream. What is that? Kalen, a place between thoughts. We share it when our dreams echo each other. Most never reach it. But your dreams, they were loud. As the souls passed, she began to anticipate the voice like light after a storm. Each day, she learned something new. Kalen spoke like a poet, but beneath the metaphor was science far beyond anything she'd read. He described energy patterns that mimicked emotion. Neural bonds formed not by proximity but by soul resonance. Nara challenged everything. She was a scientist, not a romantic. But still, she listened. He described the Thessi, his people. Nomads. Once corporeal, now in transition, part organic, part resonant field. Their minds linked in what he called sympathy nets. But Kalen was broken. His link severed. The exile mark burned into his aura. They called it root severing, he explained. It is the worst punishment. It unbinds you from collective memory. You become one. Alone. Ungrounded. And yet, he said, I still heard you. On the 10th soul, she asked the question she had been too afraid to ask before. Why me? His answer came slow. Deliberate. Because when the last bloom stream collapsed, and all our tethered minds vanished, only one pulse remained. Yours. I heard your dream. A tree with blue leaves. The last memory of a world where connection still meant something. And in that silence, I fell in love with the echo. That word caught her breath. Love. It felt absurd. Impossible. Wrong. And yet. Nara didn't laugh. She typed back. Maybe I'm just lonely. His reply. Maybe that's where love begins. Nara stopped logging her research. She stopped sending updates. Her plants began to wilt. She didn't notice. On Soul 15, she awoke with a start. The dream had shifted. She stood at the tree, but this time, someone else was there. A man. Tall. Cloaked in light. No features. Just presence. He held out his hand. And for the first time, she reached back. She asked Kalen to send proof. Anything. Something real. The next day, a package arrived in the bot bay. A drone, unmarked, silent, delivered a single petal. Blue. Translucent. Pulsing with light. The material didn't match any known flora. It vibrated at a frequency just below human hearing, and when she touched it, it warmed. She placed it in her personal greenhouse and didn't tell command. Soul 19, the voice didn't come. She waited all night. Nothing. Soul 20, silence again. On Soul 21, at 1739, she received a single word. Run. Emergency alarms blared an hour later. Orbital debris in Mars' upper atmosphere. A ship, unregistered, breaking through at unnatural speed. Central Command issued a red alert. No contact. Unknown tech. Nara sat in the comms room, trembling. A second message arrived, unencrypted. They found me. I'm coming to you. Space had never felt like exile before. In the early days, Kalen's sire found silence comforting. After the severance from the Thessi net, after the ritual unbinding, he welcomed the vacuum. It was less cruel than their voices turned cold. Less final than the way his mother had looked through him when the council pronounced the punishment. No root. No echo. No belonging. He was untethered. A soul cast adrift. He left their orbit in a husk of a ship barely kept together by resonance coils and artificial atmosphere, technology they had taken from long-dead civilizations and never truly understood. They let him keep it because they thought it would fall apart. They did not expect him to endure. But he had. Because he remembered a voice. Or perhaps more accurately, a dream. Not his, but hers. The woman in the bloom stream. He did not know her name then. Only the way she walked in the white sand, how she stood at the base of the blue tree, her hand trembling, her eyes full of a sadness that called to him across impossible distance. Nara. He had whispered her name 1,000 times in the dark before he ever learned it was real. He drifted for years in uncharted space. Decades, maybe. Time blurred when there was no one to mark it. His body changed. Thessi physiology was elastic, morphic, his skin no longer held pigment, and his eyes pulsed with faint light even in sleep. The anchor threads on his arms, once dormant, had begun to move again. They stirred when she dreamed. He found her signal by accident, or perhaps by intention. Fate, if you believed in that. Mars was louder than most planets. Not with noise, but with grief. A planet abandoned by gods, sustained by machines and aching human hope. His coils hummed with resonance the moment he neared orbit. Her frequency, her ache, was unmistakable. She had dreamed the tree again. And now, so had he. The first time he spoke, he didn't expect her to answer. Do you still dream of the tree with the blue leaves? A simple question. But a dangerous one. Contact was forbidden. Even in exile, the Thessi laws reached deep. He should have kept his silence. Drifted elsewhere. Instead, when she asked, "Who are you?" he told the truth. When they spoke, he felt tethered. Faintly. Not like before. Not the root web of his people. This was, thinner. Fragile. But real. He learned the shape of her voice. Her thoughts, tentative and sharp, like shards of light reflecting off broken stone. He could tell she mistrusted herself more than him. Nara was human. Alone. Brilliant. Cautious. And unbearably kind in a way that made his chest tighten. In time, he stopped drifting. Set anchor in Mars' low orbit. Watched her through the pulse scanners. Never close enough to be seen. But close enough to feel her frequency hum beneath his skin. When she dreamed, the resonance in his chest plate would shift. He would record the pattern. Memorize it. Sleep beside it. He told himself it wasn't love. And then he told himself it was. His people once believed that soul bonding required physical proximity. The root rings had to be entwined. The pulse had to sink at less than 5 paces. Chemical connection, eye contact, breath. But something had changed in him since the severance. He no longer needed breath to feel. Nara changed that. Kalen did not fear death. But he feared what would happen to her if the others found him. The Thessi Council had been quiet for too long. They would not want him to bond with an outsider. They would destroy him. And her. So he sent the warning, one word, encoded through old satellite bands. Run. He didn't expect her to stay. When he received her response, "Where are you?" "I'm not leaving," he felt something in his chest unravel. She would risk everything. For him. Now, they would come. He powered down his ship's exterior light band and reconfigured the hull's frequency mask. He dipped lower into Martian orbit, his engine systems nearly silent. Then, he sent one last message. "I'm coming to you." The re-entry nearly tore the vessel apart. It was never built for descent, only escape. But he needed to be closer. She needed to see him. To know he was real. The ship landed in the Martian canyon just beyond Outpost 17. A narrow ravine veiled by magnetic interference. Old Thessi tech, abandoned and forgotten, still pulsed beneath the sand, throwing off scans. He stepped onto the surface with boots reinforced in old alloy. Gravity pressed against his joints, but the air, thin as it was, carried her scent. Faint. Earthy. She had walked this ground. He followed the tether. Every step humming with the pull of her. He found her standing beside the greenhouse dome, her hands clenched at her sides. He stopped at the boundary line, gave her space. She didn't move. He lowered his hood. Her breath caught. And for a moment, the world narrowed. Nara Velen had not expected beauty. Not like this. His skin was luminous, the color of smoke laced with starlight. His eyes, pale blue, glowing from within, watched her as if every movement mattered. A weave of thin thread spiraled up his arms, glowing faintly at her presence. No weapon. No threat. Only awe. "You're real," she said. He bowed his head, slowly. "So are you." She reached out, almost touching the thread on his wrist, then hesitated. "What are these?" "Remnants of what I was," he said quietly. "What I am, with you." She stepped closer. "They move when you speak to me. They move because you dream." They spent the night in the dome, seated among the green vines and soil beds. He didn't sleep. She didn't need to. Instead, she asked questions. Everything she'd locked behind years of silence burst forth. He answered what he could. Explained his exile, his people's distrust of anything not rooted in the net. "But I heard something else in your dreams," he said. "You've been alone, too." She laughed, soft and bitter. "Humans are good at being alone." He shook his head. "You're good at pretending you don't need to be found." In the early hours, she offered him her hand. He took it. The moment their skin touched, her heartbeat echoed through his threads. The room brightened slightly. They both noticed. "What is this?" she whispered. "Resonance," he said. "But more. It's beginning." "Of what?" "Bond." She didn't let go. In the following souls, they built trust like a garden. Slowly. With missteps. With tenderness. He stayed in the greenhouse quarters, sleeping near the algae tanks, watching her hands as she worked the soil. She found his presence comforting. Not distracting. For the first time in years, she felt seen. He asked about Earth. She asked about his people's lost songs. He hummed one. She cried. On the eighth soul, he showed her how the petal he'd sent was a living memory, encoded with emotion. "Place it near your pulse," he said. She did. It vibrated gently. Warmth spread through her ribs. "This is how I first knew you," he said. "You carried this?" "For 12 years. She blinked. "I thought about giving up." He looked away. "So did I." But the bond now sang between them. Not with words. Not with touch. Just presence. A living thing. It would grow, if they let it. But the Thessi weren't done. On the 10th soul, his threads began to burn. He collapsed in the dome, convulsing, as a signal burst through the soil. They had found him. Nara knelt beside him, her hand over his chest. His voice, shaking, escaped between gasps. "They're calling the severance again. To finish what they started." "What do we do?" she whispered. His hand gripped hers. "Run, and you might live." "What if I stay?" He met her gaze, tears glowing at the edges of his eyes. "Then we both change everything." And she did not run. Solari Wynn had stopped naming stars years ago. There were only so many pinpricks of light you could catalog before they blurred into sameness. She used to name them after poems. Old lovers. Stray animals she remembered from childhood. Now, most of them were just coordinates and timestamps. But there were 2 stars she could not forget. Nara Velen. Kalen Sire. Not stars, really. Not yet. But becoming. Solari drifted in the shadow of an asteroid called Luma 7, a rogue celestial body converted into a living ship. It hummed with resonance, powered by a technology older than the human word for soul. She didn't remember when she last saw a planet. Earth was a distant memory. She'd left after the tether fractures began, back when she still thought emotion could be measured and love charted like a map. She was wrong. And she knew it now. Memory mapping had taught her that. The Heartship Atlas wasn't a place. It was a system, a living web of consciousness tied together by thought echoes, dream sequences, and emotional frequencies. Solari hadn't built it. She'd just found it, half buried in the black, pulsing faintly through space like a dying heartbeat. And when she activated it, she'd felt them. 2 minds, reaching for one another. Across dust. Across distance. Her monitors lit with readings unlike anything she'd seen. Their bond wasn't just strong, it was changing the field around them. Bending thought into matter. Warping reality in measurable ways. She didn't understand it fully, but the implications made her breath catch. The readings were clean. Consistent. Pure. Nara and Kalen were bound. But they were also being hunted. She stared at the signal tracing across the neural bands. Mars. Canyon Quadrant Delta. Heavy interference. Unregistered landing from a Thesi-pattern vessel. Confirmed presence of exile energy. The Council would see it too. Soon. And they would shut it down. Or worse. Solari opened her transmitter. Kalen Sire, you do not know me. I am Solari Win. A mapper. You have triggered the Atlas. Your bond is disrupting gravity in Quadrant Delta. They will find you soon. No answer. So she tried again, this time on a harmonic band, not language. A sound. A note. A gentle minor chord wrapped in memory tones. Then, response. Solari Win. I know your name. You once dreamt of a boy in blue water. You held his hand. You let go. But you still wait. Her hands froze over the console. She stared at the speaker. Who told you that? You did, Kalen answered. In the bloom stream. Your echo still sings. She sat back, breathing shallow. He was stronger than she thought. More attuned. Nara had changed him. Love was doing something to them both. She'd mapped thousands of memories. Millions of thought streams. But she had never seen one evolve like this. You have to move, she told him. Your bond is too loud. You're glowing through space like a beacon. Then guide us, came a second voice. Nara. Soft, but sure. You found us. Help us get where they can't follow. Solari closed her eyes. There was one place. One she had buried in memory. The Bridge of Spheres. Not a real place. Not in physical space. But a fold in the Atlas, where tethered minds could hide, not in distance, but in resonance disguise. She had only used it once. Long ago. To forget. To grieve. To let someone go. You won't come back the same, she warned them. We don't want to be the same, Nara replied. Solari input the route. It wasn't coordinates. It was a pulse. A sequence of memory echoes shaped like music. She transmitted the code. Follow the rhythm, she whispered. And don't let go of each other, no matter what you see. The bridge opened. And they entered. Inside the bridge, the laws of physics curled like ribbon. There was no ship. No ground. No air. Just emotion, stretched across color and shadow. Solari had once called it the ocean of thought, but it was deeper now. Denser. And it was listening. Kalen saw himself as a boy, surrounded by echo-parents with blurred faces. He reached out, they vanished. Then Nara was a child again, kneeling in Arizona dust beside a broken telescope. Her father's hand hovered above her shoulder, but never touched. The bridge tested them. It tried to fracture them. But they held hands. And then, light. The bridge opened its second gate. And the Heartship Atlas surged. Solari nearly lost the signal. Her screens went white. Systems crashed. Energy flared. Every sound became music and every light became memory. Then, calm. Her system rebooted. 2 pulses, faint but stable, appeared on the monitor. They had survived. "Are you here?" she asked, barely daring to hope. "We're here," Nara said, voice cracked but alive. "What is this place?" Kalen whispered. "A fold between," Solari replied. "A sanctuary made of song and sorrow." Nara laughed softly. "Sounds like love." Solari didn't cry often. But she cried then. Over the next cycle, she taught them how to live there. How to shape the space with thought. How to bury echoes too loud to hide. How to protect what they had. Nara grew the blue tree again, real this time, or as real as it could be. Its leaves shimmered with memory. Kalen anchored their new shelter with resonance coils formed from his thread lines. He wove protection into the ground. Solari named the space Highland's Cradle, after the boy in the water she once loved and lost. They asked her to stay. She almost said yes. But she was a wanderer. A keeper of maps. This place was for lovers. Hers was the space between them. When she left, she gave them the Atlas seed. "Plant this when you're ready to build a world," she said. "It remembers everything." Nara embraced her, whispering, "You saved us." Kalen bowed. And Solari drifted back into the void, her ship quiet, her heart not healed, but no longer hollow. Somewhere beyond the charted stars, 2 souls grew a world with nothing but a song. Riven Nor had been born with too much skin and too few lies. The elders called him a tactile bridge, someone who could feel the truth in another simply by touch. Not empathy, not intuition, knowing, raw and irreversible. It had never felt like a gift. He had touched a murderer once and bled from the eyes for 3 days. He had kissed someone who claimed to love him, only to feel the empty coil where love should have lived. After that, he stopped touching. Until the dreams came. Until the blue leaves returned. He tracked the signal back to the fold Solari had once called Highland's Cradle. She hadn't meant for anyone else to find it. Her maps were clever, coded in resonance and layered memory. But Riven knew how to listen differently. He didn't follow the song. He followed the silence between. And there, beneath the veil of the bridge, 2 souls glowed with reckless clarity. A human woman. A Thessi exile. He felt it before he saw them, their bond. Vibrant. Dangerous. Too bright for its own good. And doomed. The moment he stepped into their fold, the trees responded. The blue leaves dimmed slightly, as if unsure. Kalen appeared first, threads flickering defensively. "You're Thessi," Kalen said, voice wary. "I was," Riven replied. "Once. Before touch became unbearable." "You crossed the bridge," Kalen said. "Why?" "Because you're going to die," Riven said simply. Nara entered behind Kalen. Her eyes widened at the sight of him. He saw her aura immediately, light-like, chaotic, but genuine. She burned with care. And you must be the reason he's still alive, Riven said, nodding to her. Who are you? She asked. Someone who once thought love could fix everything, Riven said. And someone who learned it's the thing that breaks you fastest. Kalen stepped forward, his threadlines tightening. You're not here by accident. No one finds the fold by accident, Riven agreed. I came because the council knows you've awakened an Atlas bond. And they're not going to tolerate it. So you're their assassin? Nara asked sharply. He smiled sadly. No, I'm their failure. They didn't trust him. And they were right not to. But Riven didn't want their bond destroyed. He wanted it understood. There was something wrong with it. Not corrupted, but imbalanced. Too much pull. Too much acceleration. It wasn't love blooming. It was love colliding. Riven tried to explain. Your frequencies are eating each other, he said. You're not sinking. You're folding inward. It feels good now, but it'll consume you. Nara crossed her arms. So what? We stop. Give it up. Riven shook his head. You need to learn how to touch without fusing. We haven't even. She stopped, flushing. Riven raised a brow. You haven't connected physically. Kalen looked away. We've been afraid to. Good, Riven said. Because if you had, one or both of you might have lost your sense of self. What do you mean? Nara asked. He looked between them. I mean your bond isn't just emotional. It's structural. You're not falling in love. You're becoming the same being. They were silent for a long time. Nara sat down beneath the blue tree, staring up at its leaves. I used to think I was afraid of being alone, she whispered. But now I wonder if I'm more afraid of disappearing into someone else. Kalen sat beside her, his threads easing around her wrist. You won't disappear, he said. But he didn't sound sure. Riven stayed 3 souls. He watched them. Listened to their dreams. Tracked their pulse frequencies. And each day, he felt something unexpected blooming in his own chest. Not envy. Not grief. Hope. He hadn't believed in it for years. On the 3rd soul, he made a decision. He invited Nara to the edge of the fold, where time bent less sharply. Put your hand in mine, he said. Just for a second. Let me read the truth of your bond. She hesitated. Will it hurt? Maybe, he said. But it'll save you. Her fingers trembled as they touched his palm. Instantly, he gasped. Her memories came flooding in. The telescope. The photograph. The soil in her hands. The moment Kalen said her name for the first time. The feel of silence lifting from her shoulders like a winter coat she no longer needed. And then. Kalen. Not his voice. Not his face. But his feeling. A warmth wrapped in stillness. A presence that asked nothing, demanded nothing, only stayed. Riven fell to his knees. Nara yanked her hand back. What did you see? She asked, shaking. Riven was crying. It's real, he whispered. It's impossibly real. He stood, slowly, eyes wide with wonder. Your bond isn't a mistake, he said. It's a new pattern. Something the council's never seen. You're not fusing, you're creating. Creating what? Kalen asked, stepping forward. A 3rd echo, Riven said. A resonant signature that exists only when you're together. Something neither of you can become alone. A child? Nara asked, stunned. No, Riven said. Not biologically. Something, purer. A shared identity that evolves instead of consumes. He looked at them both. I think you're the first of your kind. Nara looked to Kalen. He reached for her hand, and this time, she didn't hesitate. The threads didn't flare. They didn't burn. They pulsed once. And settled. Riven stayed one more soul. They built a garden together. Planted memories in the soil. He laughed for the first time in years. Nara touched his shoulder before he left. "Thank you," she said. "No," he replied. "Thank you. For reminding me that touch doesn't always have to mean loss." Before he stepped back into the fold's edge, he turned to Kalen. "They'll come for you again," Riven said. "And I may not be able to stop them next time." "What should we do?" Kalen asked. "Keep building," Riven said. "Keep loving. But anchor it with choice, not fusion." He looked between them. "Remember who you are, even as you become more." And then he was gone. Somewhere beyond the veil, the council stirred. But so did something older. The third echo. And it was just beginning to wake.